My name is Michael, and I'm a 36-year-old IT consultant. Life had always been predictable for me, in both my career and my marriage. My wife, Sarah, was 35, a dedicated social worker with an unwavering commitment to her job. We'd been married for 9 years, and during that time, we'd built a life together that seemed stable and secure. Our routine was simple but comforting: work, dinner, occasional weekend outings, and quiet evenings spent at home. There were no grand adventures or dramatic twists, just the steady rhythm of our shared existence. Sarah was the kind of person who lit up a room with her smile, her laughter contagious and genuine. She was compassionate and empathetic, traits that made her an exceptional social worker. Her dedication to helping others often left her exhausted, but she never complained. Instead, she found solace in the knowledge that she was making a difference. I admired her for it, even if it sometimes meant that she came home too tired to do anything other than collapse on the couch. Our relationship had its ups and downs, like any marriage. There were moments when we disagreed or grew frustrated with each other's quirks, but we always managed to find common ground. We communicated openly, though perhaps not as frequently as we should have. Work consumed much of our time, leaving little room for deep conversations about our feelings or aspirations. But we loved each other, and that was enough, or so I thought. The first signs of change began to surface when Sarah received an invitation to her high school reunion. It arrived one evening, tucked inside the usual stack of bills and junk mail. As soon as she saw the envelope, her eyes lit up with excitement. "A reunion," she exclaimed, her voice filled with a childlike enthusiasm I hadn't seen in years. "I haven't seen some of these people since graduation." At first, I didn't think much of it. High school reunions were commonplace, after all, and Sarah had always been popular among her peers. She had countless stories about her teenage years, filled with anecdotes about friendships, pranks, and crushes. I listened to them with mild interest, content to let her reminisce about the past while I focused on the present. But as the days went by, Sarah's excitement only grew. She started talking more about the reunion, recounting old memories with a newfound intensity. She mentioned names I barely remembered, classmates she hadn't seen in over 15 years. Each story seemed to carry a sense of nostalgia, as if those carefree days held something precious that she longed to recapture. I tried to share in her enthusiasm, asking questions and offering supportive comments. Yet, there was a part of me that felt uneasy. Something about her reaction struck me as odd. It wasn't just the way she spoke about her former friends, it was the way she looked when she talked about them. There was a sparkle in her eyes, a hint of longing that went beyond mere reminiscence. It was as if she were yearning for something more than just a reunion, a chance to reconnect with a piece of her past that had been lost along the way. Despite my misgivings, I kept my concerns to myself. After all, what could possibly go wrong? A few hours of catching up with old friends, sharing stories, and laughing over shared memories. Harmless, right? Besides, I had work commitments that would keep me busy that weekend, so attending the reunion wasn't an option for me. Sarah seemed disappointed at first, but she quickly brushed it off, assuring me that she would have a great time without me. As the date of the reunion drew closer, Sarah became increasingly preoccupied with preparations. She spent hours trying on different outfits, searching for the perfect dress that would make her feel confident and beautiful. She pored over old yearbooks, pointing out faces and recalling details about people I barely knew. Every conversation seemed to revolve around the reunion, and I found myself growing more distant, retreating into my own world of work and routine. Looking back now, I realize that this was the beginning of the end. The seeds of doubt and suspicion had already been planted, even if I didn't recognize them at the time. Little did I know that the reunion would become the catalyst for a series of events that would unravel everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my wife, and myself. It's strange how life can change in an instant, how seemingly insignificant moments can lead to monumental consequences. That high school reunion was supposed to be a celebration of the past, a chance for Sarah to relive cherished memories and reconnect with old friends. Instead, it became the spark that ignited a firestorm of betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately, transformation. As I sit here reflecting on those fateful days, I can't help but wonder how things might have been different if I had paid closer attention, if I had listened more carefully to the subtle shifts in Sarah's behavior. But hindsight is a cruel teacher, and all I can do now is tell the story of how our lives unraveled, piece by painful piece. When Sarah returned from the reunion, she was practically glowing. Her cheeks were flushed with excitement, her eyes sparkling with the kind of joy I hadn't seen in months. She couldn't stop talking about the event, recounting every detail with vivid enthusiasm. At first, I was happy for her, glad to see her so animated and full of life. But as the days passed, I began to notice something unsettling, a pattern emerging in her stories that hinted at more than just innocent catch-ups with old friends. She spoke endlessly about the reunion, describing the decorations, the music, the food, and the endless stream of familiar faces. But amidst these general accounts, there was one name that kept surfacing more frequently than the rest: Jake. Jake, her high school sweetheart, the boy she'd dated briefly before we met. He was someone I'd heard about before, of course. Sarah had occasionally mentioned him in passing, painting him as a charming but immature young man who had broken her heart when they were teenagers. But now, Jake's presence in her story seemed to overshadow everyone else. "He hasn't changed a bit," she gushed one evening, flipping through the photos on her phone. "Still has that same easygoing charm, you know." I forced a smile, nodding politely as she showed me snapshots of herself standing next to Jake, their arms casually draped around each other. They looked happy, almost too comfortable together. "Seems like you two had a lot to catch up on," I remarked casually, trying to mask the growing unease in my chest. Sarah laughed, brushing off my comment with a wave of her hand. "Oh, it's nothing serious. Just fun to reminisce, you know. It's amazing how some people stay with you, even after all these years." Her words should have reassured me, but they didn't. There was something about the way she said them, the way her eyes lingered on the screen, that sent a chill down my spine. It was as if she were living in a moment suspended between the past and the present, caught in a web of memories that I couldn't fully understand. Over the next few weeks, Sarah's behavior began to shift in subtle yet unmistakable ways. She became more engaged with her phone, constantly checking notifications and responding to messages with a fervor that bordered on obsession. When I asked who she was texting so frequently, she brushed it off with vague explanations, "Just catching up with old friends," she'd say, her tone dismissive. But her secrecy around her phone was becoming harder to ignore. One evening, as we sat together watching TV, I noticed her phone buzzing repeatedly on the coffee table. Without thinking, I reached for it, intending to hand it to her. But she snatched it away before I could touch it, her face flushing with embarrassment. "Sorry, Mike, it's just personal stuff," she stammered, avoiding my gaze. The awkwardness of the moment hung in the air like a thick fog, impossible to ignore. That night, I lay awake in bed, my mind racing with questions. What was happening? Why was Sarah acting so differently? Was it really just harmless nostalgia, or was there something more sinister at play? I tried to convince myself that I was overreacting, that my suspicions were unfounded. After all, we had a good marriage, built on trust and mutual respect. Surely, a few late-night texts couldn't undo years of love and commitment. But as the days wore on, the evidence piled up. Sarah's secretive behavior became more pronounced, her excuses more flimsy. She started going out more often, claiming she needed to meet up with friends from the reunion. Sometimes she'd leave early in the morning, returning late at night with a look of exhaustion etched on her face. Other times, she'd cancel plans with me, saying she had unexpected commitments that couldn't be avoided. Each excuse chipped away at my confidence, leaving me feeling more isolated and confused. One particularly telling incident occurred on a Friday evening. Sarah had promised to join me for dinner at our favorite restaurant, a rare treat given our busy schedules. But as the hour approached, she called to say she wouldn't be able to make it. Something came up, she explained hurriedly, her voice tinged with urgency. I'm sorry, Mike. Can we reschedule? I agreed reluctantly, my disappointment masked by a veneer of understanding. Later that night, unable to shake the nagging feeling that something was amiss, I decided to check her social media accounts. It was a breach of privacy, I knew, but I couldn't help myself. What I found confirmed my worst fears. There, on her Instagram feed, was a series of posts from earlier that evening. Photos of her smiling alongside Jake, their arms wrapped around each other as they posed for the camera. In one picture, they were sitting close together at a dimly lit cafe, their heads tilted toward each other as if sharing a secret. The captions beneath the images were innocuous enough, "Great catching up with an old friend." But the images told a different story. My heart sank as I scrolled through the pictures, each one fueling my growing sense of betrayal. How could she do this to me? How could she flaunt her connection with Jake so publicly, while lying to my face about her whereabouts? The realization hit me like a punch to the gut, leaving me breathless and reeling. In that moment, I knew that our marriage was hanging by a thread. The reunion, which had once seemed like a harmless trip down memory lane, had become a catalyst for something far more dangerous. Old flames were reigniting, and behind my back, Sarah was allowing hers to burn brighter than ever. As I sat alone in the dark, staring at the damning evidence on my phone, I couldn't help but wonder, how much longer could I pretend that everything was okay? How much longer could I ignore the cracks forming in the foundation of our relationship? The answer, I feared, was not much longer at all. As the days turned into weeks, the situation between Sarah and me grew increasingly tense. Her behavior became more erratic, and my suspicions escalated to a point where I could no longer brush them aside. It wasn't just the late-night texts or the mysterious outings anymore, it was the small, almost imperceptible changes in her demeanor that spoke volumes. Sarah had always been open and transparent with me, but now, she was guarded, evasive, and quick to anger whenever I questioned her activities. I found myself becoming obsessed with uncovering the truth. Late at night, when the house was silent and Sarah slept soundly beside me, I would scroll through her social media feeds, looking for clues that might confirm my worst fears. Her interactions with Jake became more frequent and intimate, their exchanges peppered with inside jokes and nostalgic references that excluded me entirely. Each new post or message felt like another nail in the coffin of our marriage. One evening, as I prepared to confront Sarah, I stumbled upon a text exchange that shattered any remaining illusions I had about her fidelity. Hidden deep within her messaging app, buried under layers of innocuous chats, was a conversation with Jake that left no room for doubt. Their words were laced with affection, promises of future meetings, and thinly veiled flirtation. The final message read, "Can't wait to see you again," followed by a heart emoji that pierced my soul like a dagger. With trembling hands, I took a screenshot of the conversation, knowing that I would need irrefutable proof if I were to confront Sarah. My heart raced as I considered the implications of what I had discovered. This wasn't just a case of harmless reminiscing or fleeting nostalgia, this was a full-blown affair, a betrayal that cut deeper than I ever imagined possible. The confrontation came sooner than expected. One Saturday afternoon, as Sarah lounged lazily on the couch, scrolling through her phone, I finally mustered the courage to broach the subject. My voice trembled as I spoke, betraying the turmoil brewing inside me. "Sarah, we need to talk," I began, my tone deliberately calm despite the storm raging within. She looked up from her phone, her expression shifting from annoyance to concern. "What's wrong, Mike?" she asked, her brow furrowing slightly. For a brief moment, I hesitated, wondering if I was overreacting, if I was about to destroy everything we had built together based on circumstantial evidence. But then I remembered the text message, the undeniable proof of her betrayal, and my resolve hardened. "I've noticed some things lately," I continued, choosing my words carefully. "You've been spending a lot of time with Jake, and I can't help but feel like there's something going on between you two." Sarah's face flushed with indignation, her defenses immediately rising. "Are you seriously accusing me of having an affair with Jake?" she demanded, her voice sharp and accusatory. "He's just an old friend, Mike. We're just catching up, nothing more." I swallowed hard, forcing myself to remain composed. "I wish I could believe that," I replied, pulling out my phone and showing her the screenshot of the text conversation. "But this tells a different story." For a moment, Sarah stared at the screen in stunned silence, her eyes wide with shock and disbelief. Then, slowly, her expression crumpled, and she slumped back against the couch, defeated. "Mike, she began, her voice breaking. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It started innocently, but then." Her admission was like a punch to the gut, confirming everything I had feared. The pain was overwhelming, a tidal wave of betrayal and heartache crashing over me. "How could you do this to us?" I whispered, my voice hoarse with emotion. "After everything we've been through, how could you throw it all away for some high school fling?" Sarah's tears flowed freely now, her body racked with sobs. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "I guess I was just lonely. You've been so busy with work, and I missed having someone to talk to, someone who understood me. Jake was there, and it felt easy. But I swear, I never meant to hurt you." Her words offered little comfort. The damage had been done, and no amount of explanation or apology could undo the devastation I felt. "Loneliness is no excuse for betrayal," I snapped, my anger bubbling to the surface. "We had a marriage, Sarah. We had trust. And you threw it all away for a few stolen moments with your high school flame." The argument that followed was heated and bitter, each word cutting deeper than the last. Sarah pleaded for forgiveness, promising to end things with Jake and rebuild our relationship. But the trust that had once bound us together was irreparably shattered. No matter how much she apologized or vowed to change, I couldn't shake the feeling that our marriage was beyond repair. In the days that followed, the tension between us grew unbearable. Sarah withdrew into herself, her guilt manifesting as silent despair. I, on the other hand, found myself consumed by a toxic mix of anger, sadness, and confusion. Our once peaceful home became a battleground, every interaction fraught with unspoken accusations and simmering resentment. Despite Sarah's promises to cut ties with Jake, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was still in contact with him. Late-night texts resumed, and her mood swings became more frequent and intense. It was clear that she was struggling with the weight of her actions, torn between loyalty to me and the pull of her past. One evening, as I lay awake in bed, I decided to take matters into my own hands. Quietly slipping out of the bedroom, I retrieved Sarah's phone from the kitchen counter, determined to uncover the truth once and for all. Scrolling through her recent messages, I found exactly what I had feared, a flurry of exchanges with Jake, filled with coded language and covert plans to meet in secret. The betrayal was undeniable, and the pain of discovering it cut deeper than ever. With shaking hands, I placed the phone back where I found it, my heart heavy with the knowledge that our marriage was truly over. There was no coming back from this, not after everything that had transpired. The following morning, I confronted Sarah with the evidence, my voice cold and detached. "You lied to me," I stated flatly, holding up her phone. "You promised to end things with Jake, but you've been seeing him behind my back. How could you do this?" Sarah's face drained of color, her lips trembling as she struggled to form a response. "Mike, please," she begged, her voice choked with tears. "I didn't want to hurt you. I don't know what to do anymore." "There's nothing left to do," I replied, my voice hollow. "This marriage is over, Sarah. I can't live like this, not knowing if I can trust you or if you're going to betray me again." Her sobs echoed through the house, but I remained unmoved. The bond we once shared had been irreparably broken, and there was no turning back. As I packed my bags and prepared to leave, I couldn't help but reflect on how quickly things had unraveled. The high school reunion, which had once seemed like a harmless trip down memory lane, had become the catalyst for our downfall. Walking out the door, I knew that my life would never be the same. The betrayal, the heartache, and the loss of trust weighed heavily on my shoulders, threatening to consume me whole. But even in the midst of such profound pain, I resolved to find a way forward, to rebuild my life and rediscover the strength and resilience that had been buried beneath the wreckage of our marriage. As I stepped into the unknown, I couldn't help but wonder what the future held. Would I ever find peace? Could I learn to trust again, or would the scars of this betrayal haunt me forever? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain: I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, armed with the knowledge that I deserved better than a life built on lies and deception. The days following my discovery of Sarah's ongoing affair with Jake were a blur of emotional turmoil. I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare, unable to wake up and escape the crushing reality of my wife's betrayal. Sleep eluded me, my mind replayed every moment leading up to the confrontation, dissecting every word and action in search of answers that simply weren't there. My appetite waned, meals left untouched as I grappled with the raw pain gnawing at my insides. Despite the physical toll, it was the emotional burden that weighed heaviest, each day a battle against the suffocating grief that threatened to overwhelm me. Confronting Sarah had been the hardest thing I'd ever done. The words stuck in my throat, my voice faltering as I struggled to articulate the depth of my hurt. When I finally managed to speak, my accusations were met with a mixture of denial, pleading, and eventual acceptance. Sarah's initial attempts to justify her actions only served to deepen my anguish. She claimed that her affair with Jake had begun innocently, that she never intended for it to spiral out of control. According to her, it was merely a case of unresolved feelings and a desire to escape the monotony of our daily routines. While her explanations provided context, they offered little solace. The conversation quickly devolved into a heated argument, emotions running high as we hurled accusations and apologies back and forth. Sarah's pleas for forgiveness fell on deaf ears, my trust shattered beyond repair. I recounted the evidence I had gathered, the incriminating text messages, the clandestine rendezvous, the unmistakable affection evident in their online interactions. Each revelation cut deeper, reaffirming my belief that our marriage was irretrievably broken. "I trusted you, Sarah," I insisted, my voice trembling with a mixture of rage and sorrow. "We had a life together, a future. How could you throw it all away for a high school flame?" Her responses were a jumble of excuses and remorse, each word dripping with regret. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she sobbed, her tear-streaked face a testament to her inner turmoil. "I was lonely, Mike. I missed having someone who understood me, someone who appreciated me. Jake was there, and it felt right." Her justification only fueled my frustration. "Loneliness is no excuse for betrayal," I shot back, my voice rising. "We've been through tough times before, but we always worked through them together. You chose to abandon our marriage for fleeting satisfaction. How could you be so selfish?" The argument dragged on, neither of us willing to concede. Sarah's attempts to placate me were met with icy indifference. I couldn't shake the feeling that every word she uttered was just another lie, another attempt to manipulate the situation in her favor. The trust that had once been the cornerstone of our relationship was now a fragile, broken relic, beyond repair. In the aftermath of our confrontation, Sarah retreated into herself, her guilt manifesting as silent despair. She moved through the house like a ghost, her eyes red-rimmed from crying, her movements sluggish and devoid of purpose. Conversations between us became strained, reduced to monosyllabic exchanges that barely concealed the underlying tension. Any semblance of normalcy was a facade, a thin veneer masking the festering wounds beneath. As the days passed, Sarah's behavior grew increasingly erratic. She oscillated between desperate attempts to win back my trust and bouts of self-pity that bordered on melodrama. On one occasion, she cornered me in the kitchen, her voice pleading and insistent. "Please, Mike, give me another chance. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. I love you, and I know we can get through this." Her entreaties grated on my nerves, stirring up a cauldron of conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to believe her, to cling to the hope that our marriage could be salvaged. But the rational part of my brain reminded me of the indisputable evidence of her infidelity. Trust, once lost, is not easily regained. "Actions speak louder than words, Sarah," I responded coldly, my resolve unwavering. "Your promises are meaningless unless you can prove otherwise." Sarah's desperation intensified, culminating in a dramatic gesture designed to demonstrate her sincerity. One evening, she presented me with a handwritten letter detailing her remorse and outlining a plan to mend our fractured relationship. The letter was heartfelt, her words pouring out in a torrent of self-recrimination and hopeful optimism. She pledged to sever all ties with Jake, seek counseling, and devote herself entirely to rebuilding our marriage. While the letter tugged at my heartstrings, it failed to sway my decision. Words, no matter how eloquent, could not erase the betrayal I had endured. "I appreciate your efforts, Sarah," I acknowledged, my tone measured. "But actions will determine whether we have a future together. Until you prove yourself trustworthy, I can't commit to this." Despite her earnest attempts at reconciliation, Sarah's behavior betrayed her true intentions. Late-night texts resumed, her mood swings grew more pronounced, and her explanations for her absences became increasingly convoluted. It was clear that she was still in contact with Jake, secretly meeting him despite her assurances to the contrary. The duplicity was maddening, fueling my growing resentment. One particularly telling incident occurred a week after our confrontation. Returning home unexpectedly from work, I found Sarah hastily deleting messages on her phone, her face pale with panic. When questioned, she feigned ignorance, claiming she had been clearing her inbox of spam. The blatant lie was the final straw, shattering any lingering doubts I harbored about her fidelity. Confronting her again, I laid out the incontrovertible evidence of her deceit. "You're still seeing him, aren't you?" I accused, my voice dripping with contempt. "All your promises, all your apologies, they were just lies." Sarah crumbled under the weight of her guilt, her defenses collapsing in a flood of tears. "I'm sorry, Mike," she sobbed, her voice barely audible. "I can't help it. I still have feelings for him. I don't know how to stop." Her confession was a gut-wrenching confirmation of what I already suspected. The betrayal ran deeper than I had imagined, rooted in unresolved emotions and misguided desires. Our marriage, once a sanctuary of love and trust, had become a battlefield of mistrust and deceit. In the wake of this devastating revelation, I made the difficult decision to end our relationship. The pain of separation was excruciating, but staying together would only prolong the agony. Our bond had been irreparably damaged, and no amount of effort could restore the trust that had been lost. Informing Sarah of my decision was one of the most challenging moments of my life, her devastated cries echoing through the empty halls of our once happy home. As I packed my belongings and prepared to leave, I reflected on the lessons learned from this harrowing experience. Trust, once shattered, is nearly impossible to rebuild. Communication, honesty, and mutual respect are the foundations of any successful relationship, and without them, love cannot flourish. Moving forward, I resolved to prioritize these values in any future endeavors, vowing never to allow myself to be blindsided by betrayal again. Leaving Sarah behind was a bittersweet farewell, a necessary step toward healing and self-discovery. Though the road ahead was uncertain, I embraced the opportunity for growth and renewal. The journey would be arduous, but I was determined to emerge stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Armed with the knowledge gained from this painful chapter of my life, I set forth on a path toward a brighter, more fulfilling future. The days following my decision to end the marriage were marked by a tumultuous blend of relief and sorrow. Sarah, initially distraught and pleading for a second chance, eventually conceded defeat. She recognized the gravity of her actions and the irreversible damage inflicted upon our relationship. Her repeated attempts at reconciliation gradually tapered off, replaced by a resigned acceptance of our impending separation. However, despite her apparent willingness to move forward, I couldn't shake the nagging suspicion that she was still clinging to the remnants of her affair with Jake. As Sarah promised to cut ties with Jake and focus on rebuilding our marriage, I reluctantly agreed to try, driven by a combination of lingering affection and a desire to salvage what remained of our shared history. Deep down, I knew that trust, once shattered, was nearly impossible to restore, but the prospect of saving our marriage offered a glimmer of hope, however faint. We embarked on this tentative journey of reconciliation, cautiously navigating the treacherous terrain of forgiveness and redemption. Initially, Sarah appeared genuinely committed to our renewed efforts. She attended couples therapy sessions, participated in open dialogues about our issues, and demonstrated a visible determination to improve our communication. These gestures, while encouraging, were marred by an undercurrent of unease. Her phone remained a source of contention, her constant vigilance over it raising red flags. I observed her meticulously monitoring notifications, surreptitiously deleting messages, and adopting a defensive stance whenever I approached the topic of her digital interactions. The first major crack in our fragile reconciliation emerged during a weekend getaway we had planned as a symbolic fresh start. Initially, the trip seemed promising, an opportunity to reconnect and rebuild the intimacy that had eroded over time. However, as the days progressed, Sarah's behavior grew increasingly suspicious. She became withdrawn, frequently disappearing under the guise of exploring nearby attractions or taking solitary walks. Her prolonged absences and vague explanations stirred my dormant suspicions, prompting me to investigate further. Late one evening, after Sarah had retired to bed, I quietly accessed her phone, driven by an insatiable need for certainty. What I uncovered was a chilling confirmation of my worst fears. Hidden within encrypted messaging apps and private chat groups were explicit exchanges between Sarah and Jake, laden with romantic declarations and covert plans for future meetings. Their interactions revealed a level of intimacy that transcended mere friendship, punctuated by tender nicknames and expressions of longing. The betrayal was unequivocal, laying bare the extent of Sarah's duplicity. The discovery left me reeling, my heart pounding with a mixture of rage and despondency. How could she continue this charade, pretending to seek reconciliation while actively nurturing her affair? The evidence was irrefutable, rendering any further attempts at reconciliation futile. I realized, with grim clarity, that Sarah had chosen Jake over me, prioritizing her illicit romance over the sanctity of our marriage. The next morning, I confronted Sarah with the damning evidence, my voice trembling with a potent cocktail of anger and disillusionment. "You lied to me again," I stated flatly, my tone devoid of emotion. "I gave you a chance to make things right, and you threw it away for Jake." Sarah's initial response was a frantic denial, her face contorted in a mask of desperation. "Mike, please, you don't understand. It's not what it looks like." Her words, however, lacked conviction, her eyes betraying her guilt. As I pressed her for explanations, her facade crumbled, revealing the stark truth. "I couldn't help it," she confessed, her voice breaking. "I still have feelings for him, and I thought maybe we could have it all." Her admission was the final blow, extinguishing any lingering hopes I harbored for reconciliation. The realization that Sarah had been playing a double game, simultaneously pursuing me while maintaining her affair with Jake, cemented my decision to end the marriage. Trust, once the cornerstone of our relationship, had been utterly obliterated, leaving behind a chasm of irreparable damage. As I packed my belongings and prepared to leave, Sarah's pleas for forgiveness fell on deaf ears. Her tears and promises of change were hollow echoes of a relationship that had ceased to exist. The betrayal had seared itself into my soul, leaving indelible scars that would take time to heal. Walking out the door, I felt an overwhelming sense of liberation, tempered by the profound sorrow of losing the woman I had once loved. The subsequent weeks were a blur of emotional upheaval as I navigated the complex process of divorce proceedings. Legal formalities and financial settlements added layers of stress to an already tumultuous period. Friends and family rallied around me, offering support and empathy as I grappled with the fallout of Sarah's betrayal. Their solidarity provided a crucial lifeline, helping me weather the storm of isolation and heartache. News of Sarah's affair spread rapidly within our social circle, eliciting a range of reactions, from shocked disbelief to scathing condemnation. Many sympathized with my plight, while others distanced themselves from Sarah, unwilling to condone her actions. The judgment and scrutiny she faced underscored the gravity of her choices, serving as a harsh reminder of the consequences of betrayal. Amidst the chaos, I focused on healing and self-renewal. Engaging in hobbies and interests I had long neglected, I sought solace in creative pursuits and physical activities. Rediscovering passions for writing, photography, and hiking provided a therapeutic outlet for processing my emotions. The camaraderie of friends and the unwavering support of family members bolstered my resilience, reminding me of the importance of community and shared experiences. Simultaneously, Sarah grappled with the repercussions of her decisions. Isolated and ostracized, she faced the daunting task of rebuilding her life amidst the ruins of her choices. Regret and remorse weighed heavily on her conscience, fueling a relentless quest for redemption. However, the erosion of trust from those around her proved challenging to overcome, highlighting the long-term ramifications of her actions. Reflecting on the tumultuous journey, I realized the invaluable lessons gleaned from this painful chapter. Trust, transparency, and mutual respect are indispensable pillars of any meaningful relationship. Without these foundational elements, love and commitment cannot thrive. Embracing these insights, I resolved to approach future relationships with heightened awareness and unwavering integrity. As I forged ahead, I found solace in the knowledge that healing is a gradual process, marked by incremental progress and moments of clarity. The path forward was fraught with uncertainty, but the prospect of personal growth and renewed hope propelled me onward. With each step, I distanced myself from the shadows of betrayal, embracing the promise of a brighter, more authentic future. Filing for divorce was one of the most emotionally taxing decisions I had ever made. The legal paperwork, though mundane and procedural, carried an immense weight. Each signature felt like a final goodbye to the life I once knew, the life I had shared with Sarah. As I filled out the forms, listing our assets and liabilities, I couldn't help but recall the countless memories we had accumulated over the years, both joyful and painful. Those memories, once a source of warmth and comfort, now seemed tainted by the betrayal that had brought us to this crossroads. Sharing the news with friends and family was equally challenging. I dreaded the inevitable questions and the sympathetic looks that would follow. Breaking the news to my parents was particularly difficult. They had always adored Sarah, viewing her as the daughter they never had. Telling them about the affair and the ensuing divorce felt like a betrayal of their trust and expectations. My father, ever the stoic, offered a terse nod of understanding, his eyes clouding with concern. My mother, on the other hand, broke down in tears, her maternal instincts compelling her to offer solace and support. Their unwavering loyalty during this turbulent period was a beacon of light, guiding me through the darkest moments of my grief. Close friends rallied around me, providing a network of emotional support that sustained me during the arduous process. Jeff, my best friend since college, was particularly instrumental. He listened patiently as I vented my frustrations, offering practical advice and a shoulder to cry on. His unwavering companionship helped alleviate the loneliness that threatened to consume me. Together, we spent countless evenings reminiscing about old times, finding solace in laughter and shared memories. His steadfast presence reminded me that I wasn't alone in this ordeal, that I had a community of people who cared deeply about my well-being. As news of the divorce spread within our social circle, reactions varied widely. Some friends expressed shock and disbelief, unable to reconcile the image of our seemingly perfect marriage with the reality of its demise. Others, more attuned to the subtle signs of discord, nodded knowingly, their sympathy tinged with a hint of schadenfreude. The gossip mill churned relentlessly, generating speculative whispers and half-truths that only added to the emotional strain. Despite the judgment and speculation, I maintained a dignified silence, refusing to engage in the rumor mill or divulge the intimate details of our marital breakdown. Sarah, on the other hand, faced a far more hostile reception. Once beloved by many, she now found herself the subject of whispered conversations and disapproving glances. The news of her affair with Jake spread like wildfire, tarnishing her reputation and alienating her from those who had once held her in high regard. Former colleagues and acquaintances distanced themselves, unwilling to associate with someone whose actions were deemed morally reprehensible. Social invitations dwindled, and invitations to gatherings and events ceased altogether, leaving Sarah isolated and vulnerable. The impact of her choices extended beyond the social sphere, infiltrating her professional life as well. As a social worker, Sarah's credibility and integrity were paramount to her success. News of her extramarital affair cast a shadow over her professional persona, raising doubts about her character and ethics. Colleagues began to question her judgment and reliability, subtly undermining her authority and influence. Promotions and opportunities that had once seemed within reach now appeared elusive, further exacerbating her sense of failure and regret. The consequences of her actions also reverberated through her personal relationships. Family members, particularly her parents, were devastated by the revelations. They had invested considerable emotional energy in supporting her marriage, believing it to be a source of stability and happiness. Learning of her infidelity shattered their faith in her, leaving them grappling with a profound sense of betrayal. Conversations with her parents grew strained, their disappointment palpable in every word exchanged. The once close bond between Sarah and her family frayed, creating a rift that would take time and effort to mend. The process of rebuilding my life after the divorce was neither swift nor straightforward. It required patience, perseverance, and a willingness to embrace change. Each day presented new challenges, but with every obstacle overcome, I grew stronger and more confident in my ability to forge a future defined by authenticity and self-worth. One of the most significant steps in this journey was rediscovering my passions. Photography became more than just a hobby, it evolved into a profound expression of my inner world. Through my lens, I captured moments of beauty and complexity that mirrored my own emotional landscape. The act of framing and composing each shot offered a meditative escape, allowing me to find peace amidst chaos. Sharing my work with others provided a sense of accomplishment and connection, reminding me that creativity could serve as a powerful catalyst for healing. Hiking continued to play an integral role in my recovery. The serenity of nature provided a sanctuary where I could reflect on my experiences without judgment or distraction. The physical exertion of climbing mountains and traversing rugged terrains symbolized my personal ascent from the depths of despair to a place of renewed hope. Each summit reached represented a milestone in my journey, a testament to my resilience and determination. The breathtaking vistas at the top served as a poignant reminder that life's challenges often lead to unparalleled rewards. In addition to these pursuits, I devoted time to nurturing relationships with friends and family. Their unwavering support had been a lifeline during the darkest days of my divorce, and I was determined to reciprocate their kindness. We shared countless meals, conversations, and adventures, forging bonds that transcended mere social obligations. These connections reminded me of the importance of community and the power of human connection in fostering emotional well-being. As I moved forward, I also made a conscious effort to cultivate a healthier relationship with myself. Mindfulness practices such as yoga and meditation became essential components of my daily routine, helping me develop greater self-awareness and compassion. These practices taught me the value of living in the present moment, free from the burdens of past regrets and future anxieties. By embracing mindfulness, I learned to approach life with a sense of curiosity and openness, welcoming both joy and adversity as opportunities for growth. Reflecting on the betrayal and heartbreak I endured, I realized that the experience, though painful, had ultimately provided valuable lessons about trust, communication, and mutual respect. Trust, once shattered, cannot be easily rebuilt, but its absence serves as a stark reminder of the importance of honesty and transparency in any relationship. Communication, too, emerged as a critical factor in maintaining healthy connections. Open, honest dialogue fosters understanding and prevents misunderstandings from festering into larger issues. Mutual respect, finally, underscores the need for reciprocity and equality within partnerships, ensuring that both parties feel valued and appreciated. These insights informed my approach to future relationships. While the prospect of love and companionship remained appealing, I was no longer willing to settle for anything less than genuine, authentic connections built on a foundation of trust and respect. I resolved to prioritize my emotional well-being, recognizing that a fulfilling partnership requires both individuals to bring their best selves to the table. This newfound clarity empowered me to approach potential relationships with discernment and intentionality, ensuring that I would not repeat the mistakes of the past. As time passed, the wounds inflicted by Sarah's betrayal began to heal. The pain, while still present, no longer dominated my thoughts or dictated my actions. Instead, it served as a poignant reminder of the strength and resilience I possessed, fueling my determination to live a life of purpose and fulfillment. I found solace in the knowledge that healing is a gradual process, marked by incremental progress and moments of clarity. Each step forward brought me closer to a place of peace and acceptance, enabling me to embrace the promise of a brighter, more authentic future. In the end, the tumultuous journey through betrayal and heartbreak yielded invaluable lessons about trust, self-worth, and resilience. While the path was fraught with challenges, it ultimately led to personal growth and transformation. The scars of the past may never fully disappear, but they have become a testament to my capacity for overcoming adversity and emerging stronger on the other side. Embracing these lessons, I continue to move forward with hope and optimism, confident in my ability to navigate whatever life has in store. And so, as I look toward the horizon, I do so with a renewed sense of purpose and a deep appreciation for the journey that brought me here. The pain of betrayal may linger, but it no longer defines me. Instead, it serves as a reminder of the strength and resilience that reside within, propelling me toward a future filled with possibility and promise.